So I'm glad that you guys invited us here this year to just present on working with USC Media Relations on research communications. I've been here since 2015 and I've been working as a specialist, and then I moved on up and recently was named executive director. I love science. So whenever you guys have something you want to just bounce off of one of us, just reach out to Paul and me and we can talk about it. But let's go ahead and just show you what we do and sort of the criteria for when we work with you. Paul, do you want to also introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Paul McQuiston, Research Communication Manager with USC Media Relations. I joined the university in November of last year and have very much enjoyed working with the faculty I've encountered so far, and have also had a very enjoyable time working with Ishwar's office in my time so far.
So here's what USC Media Relations does for you. We're really interested in when you have a study accepted. So the reason that we want to know when it's been accepted is because we also need to prepare for when the embargo lifts. And the best way to do that is to work in advance with you so that you have time to go over whatever we've drafted for you, whether it's a pitch, whether it's a video, or whether we're going to move forward with the full treatment, which is a news release. So we're looking for top tier peer-reviewed research. So anything that's a high impact journal and is newsworthy. We look also for opportunities for you as just an expert to be quoted by news outlets. That's if you're interested in being available for breaking news on something that touches on your field or your area of expertise. And then we would like to promote you within the USC community by producing USC news stories or Q&As with you. That also helps us get a firm handle on what your research is about and where you're headed with it.
Mail.
Don't see any.
Thank you, sir.
Chris, you're not muted. I'm sorry. And then Paul, you want to take it away on how we do some training, and then what else we do to help people? Sorry.
Absolutely. As Emily mentioned, we're here to help you. So part of that help is going to be through media training. If you are unfamiliar with working with the media, we're happy to sit down with you and go through some strategies that might be useful for you when you encounter a journalist, both friendly or potentially not. Ways that we get the work that you're doing out into the public is we're trying to position you as a thought leader in your field. How do we do that? We work with local, regional, national, and international journalists to put your work out there. And we have relationships that have been going on for much time now and will be helpful in placing your work. Mechanisms we use to do that are source alerts. We put your expertise out into the hands of the reporters that we could use that. We use our strong relationship with The Conversation, which is an opportunity for you to put your words out there about your research to a broad audience. We also use Eureka Alert, which is very helpful in making sure that people in your field and industry publications are aware of what is taking place in your research. Additionally, we have a fair share of podcasts where we can have you speak about your research, put a little bit more of a human touch on the work that you're doing, make it more relatable for a broad audience. And we also have USC News, which is one of our most powerful outlets as well. Emily?
Well, and just a reminder here too, when we are working on something, it's also an opportunity to talk about media training and how we should be speaking to media. So just keep that in mind as we're moving forward if you're interested in learning more about media and how to work with us and them. Our expertise is media. A lot of my team is from media originally, so we're former journalists and we know what journalists are looking for. So just keep that in mind. Who we reach, well, we are looking to hit the international, national, regional audiences. Sometimes the work is really focused on LA and our best shot is LA media. But if it's something that can be applied to other cities around the country, we can make a push to get landed in something like the New York Times or maybe the Atlantic and City Lab under Bloomberg News. So those are some of the topics that might get you more notoriety, is if you are working on something that's a model or like a micro example of something that's going on in the macro. We also are reaching our faculty and administration. We work regularly with the communications team in the provost office to get you recognition. Sometimes they are really interested in knowing if you have an award or if you recently received a recognition that should be honored on their Twitter feeds. And then we also are reaching the Trojan community. Who does that include? Potential donors, alumni, students, other staff and faculty. And then the last thing that the last couple of groups we can reach are the funding organizations that pay attention to your work. The Alzheimer's Foundation, for example, might be interested in funding additional Alzheimer's research. And if you have a novel take on doing Alzheimer's research, you can get attention just by coming to us when you have an accepted study, or if you are planning to speak at a major conference. And then policymakers. Policymakers pay attention to the work of a lot of our researchers. You might have noticed that Franita Tolson is regularly called to the congressional hearings to testify on issues of voting rights. And some of our folks at Schaefer Center also are heavily influential in Medicare and healthcare issues. Paul?
We in our office regularly receive inquiries from major news publications, including the New York Times, Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, Wall Street Journal. And where that is helpful or that is useful is that we can position you as a leader in these fields that we're receiving requests on, even if you don't have ongoing research. These are wonderful opportunities to put your name out there as a thought leader in your field, in some of the largest publications in the United States and the world. You
want to talk to them about these two examples? So the first one that you see in Discover Magazine was a study that was led by Margie Gatz, along with some other collaborators across the university. And so when we saw that they had been studying a particularly indigenous group and has been able to avoid high rates of dementia and Alzheimer's, we thought, oh, this is going to be a big deal because of the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's in the US is much higher. And so we were able to land that in Discover Magazine, which is one of the premier mainstream science pubs. We know quite a few reporters over there, freelancers. So that is another relationship that we've been working with to build additional coverage of science at USC. And then the one on the right you'll notice is Wired Magazine. Now that's an interesting one just because normally Wired does not handle something like a neuroscience study or neurobiology in this case. And this was a study that was led by one of our biologists in Dorn Seif, who also works with Michelson, and our imaging expert, maybe a lot of you know him, is Scott Frazier, and he really brings science to life just because he does imaging. And so people really were just gripped by this idea that you could watch in real time a brain form memories and have it be caught on a multidimensional imaging system. So those are the kinds of hits that we can garner when we have great science, great spokespeople for their science who are willing to defend their work and also talk about how it advances knowledge and why that's important. So choose your own adventure. This is research selection. This is a map of what the criteria that we need in order to make a decision about how we will help you and how much we will help you. So it's really critical that we have these 4 bubbles checked off. It needs to be embargoed research, peer-reviewed journal, timely and newsworthy. Collaborators and funders must be behind it. So if you got a grant, say from the NSF, that's important for us. Sometimes we team up with the NSF on promoting your work. They love it when we do videos. They love it when we share news releases with great art. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is if you are one of those special people who got an NSF grant, it might bring to life your work just to work with us. If these elements are missing, any one of them, then we just can't go down the path of a full treatment. Say you're speaking at a conference though, and you're going to be releasing a paper there, that still is considered embargoed research for us. And so we would want to know what you're going to be speaking about, but not release anything about it until after you've spoken. So that's important to know too, is just we don't want to jump the gun on the whole peer review process. The yes section here on the left. So if you have all of these elements, it's embargoed research, it's peer reviewed, timely, and you've got collaborators, I think we're going to go ahead and move ahead with the press release. That's if you've told us about this in a timely fashion. If you have not given us a heads up and you said, oh, ta-da, this release or this piece of research just came out, I got to tell you, for science journalists, it's too late. Journalists say we need a heads up in order to build a story around the embargo lift. So if you really want to work with journalists, you're going to give us a heads up when it's been accepted. You'll keep telling us when it's been edited so that we can see the changes and advance the whole editing process around a news release too, and a pitch. And that's the full treatment, is when we give you a release, perhaps a story about you and your work, and also do some pre-pitching with journalists who agree to the embargo. On the right, you see the no section. So if you have a review paper, generally we don't do those unless they reveal something absolutely stunning that could rock the entire field. If it's a commentary, we generally don't promote those either, unless you have a unique take that we think could play interestingly in mainstream media. That is very rare. If you've already written the commentary, an op-ed editor views that as one and done. You've already talked to somebody, you've already shared it on publication, they're not interested. The New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Washington Post want unique proposals that have only gone to their respective outlets. If you pitched it anywhere else, they will not take it. The other option is the conversation, which Paul can describe to you.
Absolutely. The conversation is a wonderful partnership we have that works with research faculty to broadcast and amplify their message behind the research. And part of that, we'll get into this, telling your story. Things that we need to know when we are building this, the collateral is, what's the headline here? Why should people care? And why should a 7th grader care? That's the kind of audience that we're thinking about when we're writing these headlines. We want as broad an audience as possible to potentially garner as a wide an audience. Things to think about: why should the guy down the street care about what's going on? We're very fortunate at USC to have very impactful, important research taking place. So many times this is going to be very self-evident, but that is something to consider when you're reaching out to us. And then what's next? What could this paper lead to? It might be policy decisions. It could be further research. It could change the direction of the research altogether. So think about that. This is part of a continuum of a story that we want to continue telling moving forward.
And I'll add to this too. And one tool that we don't mention is we have a vast department here in communications and marketing that includes a social media team. So we could share your research on Twitter. We could share it on LinkedIn just so that you get some additional attention. And we would tag you if you have a Twitter account or LinkedIn profile. So keep that in mind. If you don't have any of those, but you're interested in learning more, just let Paul and me know, and we'll put you in touch with Vicki and her team on social. So quit toggling, please. Why do people care? Well, the stories resonate, right? The kinds of stories that resonate in science, they tend to have these themes that you see here. Origin stories, those are the sorts of stories you might see in Scientific American or even the New Yorker about how a scientist became a scientist and the problem that they are taking on. And maybe that they're having some great success in, or they've run into other challenges that have thwarted them. Heroes, so scientists saving lives, saving democracy, feeding the world. These are stories that people feel energized and inspired by. And then discovery with impact, whether it's good or bad for people. Or recently we had we didn't know that. David Reichlin out of USC Dornsife just had a study that has really made major, has gotten a lot of traffic on social. It's all about how what you're doing while you're sitting, if you're 60 and over, could impact your risk for dementia. Certain activities put you at greater risk, and other activities while you're sitting there on your keister could actually reduce your risk. So that's what's so interesting about the work, is it has a good story. Everyone who is, reading the piece knows, oh, I sit sometimes, right? Or I watch TV, or I'm on the computer a lot. So that's a very relatable piece, and that's why it's getting so much traffic. And then lastly, the other storyline that we have is innovation. I do think that we've had some great innovations out of Viterbi, which of course we're going to be describing to reporters, particularly in September when ISI is celebrating its 50th anniversary. They've been very core to the internet, and they've also had some great developments in recent years with deepfake video identification by YL Abdelmajid over there, and others. So I'm only giving a couple examples. This is not favoritism, but we've worked with him, so we have an insight into his work. Would love to work with you too, so just keep that in mind. All right, next slide.
We understand that sometimes the first time speaking with a journalist can be nerve-wracking. It's important to remember you are the expert. And in doing that, stick to your area of expertise. Don't comment on other study in the field. Going into the interview, when you're preparing, identify the 2 or 3 points that you want to emphasize and you really want to get across the journalist. That will help them shape an article that is what you're looking for and what will be the best mechanism to broadcast your research. If you have visuals, consider that from the very beginning. Let us know, because we have a very talented graphic design team that can help convey your work in a very visual, attractive way. When you are speaking to a reporter, you are speaking for yourself and for your work. You are not a representative of the university. This means that you have academic freedom as a faculty member and researcher.
Can I chime in here too?
Absolutely.
It also means when there is a crisis going on at the university or a scandal, that you're not the right person to talk about it. So sometimes reporters, they do this little thing where they want to talk to you about your expertise, but then they're like, well, you're from this institution where this is happening. Can you comment on that? Best thing you can do is say, I'm not the right person to talk about that, and I can send you to Paul, who can help you, or to Emily.
And to that point, if you have an interview where there are some questions that you're not comfortable answering, let us know. We need to manage the relationship with the reporter, and that will be added to our understanding of who we're going to be working with. The last 2 points are very related. Take the time to build rapport with journalists. You are both mutually interested in the same things. They're interested in your research, and you're interested in your research becoming more widely known. Social media is an excellent tool for that. Reporters are very active on Twitter, and that is an excellent way to engage with them to make sure that you're top of mind when they're looking for experts.
I'll add to this too. Part of building rapport is making sure you're available. It's really disappointing to us when we have a call from the Wall Street Journal. We turn them over we try to reach an expert that would fit their need, the questions that they're asking. And the expert says, I just can't today. I don't have any time. Well, if you really want to build a media profile, and that was the first time you had the Wall Street Journal call you, you might want to rethink that. Might want to just tell us when you would be available so that we could schedule around you. If you lose a Wall Street Journal call, it's possible that they will not reach out to you again.
And just a few final thoughts. Not everything that your research is going to be newsworthy. Foundational research sometimes is difficult to convey to a wide audience. However, please let us know. We like to be aware, just in case we do have a reporter that could be interested in that work. Stand by your work. This is impressive work. This is incredible. We know the impact of what you're doing, so be proud of that and stick with it. And like Emily just mentioned, if you want media, please make yourself available. let us know the best ways to get in touch with you, and we're going to be excited to work with you.